Hey all, how are you?
Hi, everyone. Doing okay? How are you all?
Well, I want to thank you all again for being patient and understanding with me last week. Yeah, I had a family emergency, and it really meant a lot that everyone was really supportive of me during that time. But I apologize again for not being able to make it last week, but I hope to make it up to you this week. So I don't know if we're waiting on anyone else, or Angie, have you heard of anyone who wasn't able to make it, or do you think we should get started?
Well, we have a couple of more people, but sometimes they don't show up and they'll watch the video. So if you want to start, you can do so.
Okay, cool. Sorry, sounds good. All right, cool. Let me share my screen. Oh, sorry, NJ says host disabled attendee screen sharing. Beautiful. Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you. All right, y'all can see that okay? Let me present. All right. So this week we're gonna talk about how to research the literary agent that is right for you. And so things to consider that we talked about in our last session, like how do you want an experienced agent who has best-selling clients, or you prefer one who's a little less experienced? Do you want a big agency, or do you prefer a more smaller boutique agency that can offer a customized service for yourself? Do you want an agent that's located in NYC, or do you prefer one that's more local to where you are based? Another question is asked, am I looking for an agent who will work with me editing my manuscript, or do you prefer to have another consultant edit it, or the editor at the publisher that you go with to edit it as well? And the best communication style that is for you. These are all things to consider when you are trying to find the best agent for you. So bearing all these questions in mind, to start, when you are looking for an agent, the best place to go is called publishersmarketplace.com. This is a paid subscription. To just keep that in mind, you can do a monthly subscription or an annual subscription, but it is, if you have the funds and the means to purchase a subscription, I highly recommend it. It's the ultimate research hub for literary agents. They have member pages. They let you know what they're querying, if they're querying, what agency they work for. And beyond that, you can also see the recent publishing deals that's going on in the industry, which is also helpful to see, like what did Penguin Random House buy last week, or even from the smaller publishers like 10 House or something like that. It's just a great resource tool to have. Other ones that are more free, if you or paid, is Query Tracker and Duotrope. I really like Query Tracker a lot too, and you'll find a lot of agents who use Query Tracker to submit your manuscript to a lot of the times as well. It's basically like a Gmail account, but for strictly agents who are able to house all of the manuscripts that writers send them. It's a really great resource tool for you all to have as writers as well. So do your research when you're choosing your agent who represents both what you write, and when you are doing that, you want to research the type of books that the agent has sold. Was it in your genre? Was it not in your genre? And who you think would be an excellent advocate to have in your corner. So when doing that, you want to find comparable books, otherwise known as comps, for your project. Who represents those comps? Who represents your favorite books? It's also important that you want to go to writing conferences. You want to network as much as possible. The more that you really get yourself out in the network and people know your name, people know your work, the better you're going to be represented as well. So go to writing conferences, go to Twitter pitch events. It's a really excellent one called DV Pit. And if you just put the hashtag in Twitter, it'll pop up right away. They do it, I believe they do it like twice a year, all housed on Twitter, where writers just do a short blurb of what their manuscript is. And then agents will often click on that hashtag and find a blurb that they find is most interesting, and then reach out to the author through Twitter. It's a great way to meet agents. So attend sessions, read interviews from both writers and agents, editors as well, listen to podcasts, follow these agents on social media as well, get the better sense of who they are beyond just their professional perspective. And this would be a great way to see who's a good fit for you. Obviously, you could see, like, Twitter's just an excellent resource because You know, you could see like someone could be tweeting racist things, and obviously, you know, okay, I don't want to go with that agent. So it's good to see what kind of who they are as a person as well. So once you have your list of agents, you want to look up their submission guidelines. Each agent has their own submission guidelines, so it's going to vary depending on the agent that you research. But many have different requirements and are fairly strict about these submissions, which is important to note. Whatever that's in the requirements, you want to adhere to and abide by. Some agencies allow writers to resubmit if they don't abide by some of these guidelines, but most agents are pretty strict, and if they don't abide by the guidelines, then they will pass on to the next writer. So some guidelines that, or for example, an agent's guidelines could indicate they're seeking, you know, Black and POC driven stories, queer driven stories, YA adult, contemporary fiction and memoir. And they'll often in these guidelines list what they're seeking in your query letter. I'm asking for, like, let's say I'm an agent, I would say as an agent, I'm seeking the first 3 chapters of your manuscript, or I'm seeking the full manuscript of your work. But just be sure to note what they are actually asking for, because this is another reason if they're only asking for the first 3 chapters and you send them the whole manuscript, they'll likely skip over your query letter and go on to the next one as well. So it's very important to send only the pages that the agent requests. So I touched on this a little bit, but use Twitter to your full advantage. Another great hashtag is MSWL, which stands for Manuscript Wishlist. And again, if you put a short blurb of what your manuscript is, use the hashtag, you'll find a lot of agents clicking on this hashtag and really just going down the thread, going down the timeline and seeing like what writers are trying to sell. And they'll often, like I said, if they come across one that they're interested in, they'll then reach out to that author. Other good hashtags are writing community, POC writers, and Latinx writers are also excellent ways that you can gain community, find out what other people are writing, how the agents are exchanging conversations with the other writers as well. Okay, so let's say you've done all the research, you have your list. So then how do you choose the right agent for you within that list? So a couple questions to consider is, what is their sales track record? So you want to evaluate their client list. So who are they representing? Who's on their roster? And who are the publishers that they have sold their clients' work to? Do the publishers they sell to align with the publishers that you are considering for your work as well? Is it an appropriate fit? This goes back to the question is, do you want a big top 5 publisher company, or do you prefer a smaller boutique? Are the advances on the client's command, are the advances their clients command in the good range for you? So if you're seeking, like, let's say an advance is $1,000, but you want particularly more in the $5,000 range, it's important to know, okay, don't sell yourself short. If you think that your work is worth more than, let's say, $1,000 advance, then you should go after an agent that you see is typically selling their clients' work at around the 5K range. And just keep in mind, these factors can be different. It varies between each agent, but particularly based on the genre category that is best aligned with your work will help you determine. Now, going back to just the first line, we evaluate their client list. Now, oftentimes maybe you want to do a new agent, which is totally fine too. So let's say you prefer to go with the one that is not as experienced. So sometimes it's easier to get represented by a new agent who is trying to build a roster of clients. You know, if you're a new author, this is particularly a lot where debut authors go in that route because they want to establish themselves just in the same alignment that the agent is establishing themselves. So if you're a new author with a potentially small deal who wouldn't interest an established author, then a new and hungry agent will probably suit you best. Even if the agent's track record is still developing, you know, take a look at their previous experience of publishing. They could be, just because they're new to the agenting world doesn't mean they're not well experienced in the publishing world. They could have been an editor at a previous house. You know, they could be a writer themselves who have already sold something and they want to become agents. You know, it's just because you see a new agent, don't be afraid to, you know, check out their LinkedIn page. What have they been doing before they came over into the agenting world? So good signs that if they were working at a solid agency with a track record, or if they have a long history with top agencies. And just take note, if they have been trying to develop their long list, it may be a red flag as if they have a long list of rosters and their writers haven't been selling something. That's something to consider as well. So second question, does their communication inspire confidence? So signs a professional agent, they get back to you in a timely manner. They communicate clearly and respectfully. Their business operations aren't cloaked in secrecy, and they treat you as a business partner. A good agent doesn't leave her clients in the dark for extended periods and will offer clarity about each stage of the process. They want it. It's important that not only are they representing your work, but you're looking for like a cheerleader, someone who is going to ride for you as well. And a third question, what is her level of enthusiasm? Listen to your inner voice. Take note of the feeling if an agent genuinely believes in you and your work. It's important to select an agent that are interested in projects that excite them and feel proud to represent and help manage their writers. Your agent is going to be handling your publisher contracts, negotiations, all of the financial matters. It's going to be in the hands of your agent. So it's important that you trust them enough to handle all this. And it's equally important that your agent champions you to the publisher throughout the whole process of your book's publication. So what to expect from a good literary agent? A good agent will have a conversation with you about any rejections that they receive. They will help improve your query, your pitch, your proposal, anything that you ask for them. They show willingness and desire to help you with that. They know their way around a book contract, and they will be your business manager, your mentor, and like I said, your cheerleader along the way as well. So after you send out your queries, there's three things that you can look for. No response at all, which is totally fine. Don't take that always to heart. Don't be hard on yourself. It's normal for agents to not respond with a rejection. The average agent receives about anywhere between 50 to 100 queries a month. So they don't have time always to respond to the folks that they don't really want to represent. Now, let's say they do like you, so they can request a partial manuscript. This is those first 3 chapters that I was talking about that often agents seek, or they could be interested and they want to read the full manuscript. Great. And that's it right now. Do you have any questions for researching? Gonna stop sharing my screen real quick.
I actually have a question. I was looking at publishing houses like over the past few weeks, and I know last time we talked too about preference, and this time too about like smaller boutique ones or larger ones. And you talked about local versus not local. How is an international, like a publisher that's located overseas, is that non-recommended? Because I found one in the UK that I kind of like, but I didn't realize that until after I was really into their website.
Well, I have a follow-up question. Do they have other US-based writers, or are they?
Yeah.
Well, then that's a good sign that they could be a good fit for you. It will be a little different, for as they'll have to go through different foreign rights that you all have to talk about amongst yourselves. But it's a good sign that if they have other US-based writers as well, then I'd say, yeah, go for it. Especially if they are, wow, excuse me, if you feel this good place in yourself, like, wow, I really like the way what they're doing, then yeah, I'd say send them a query letter for sure.
Thank you.
I have a question about how many agents to query at the time, especially if they're in the same agency or lit boutique. Do you wait for an agent in that agency to reject you and then you go with another one? Should I rank my top and then sort of just go down as I get rejections or get ignored? What do you think is the best strategy for approaching the query, and who and when and what?
Yeah, I would definitely rank at first. A lot of agents also, if they come across a query letter, that they'll share it within their own department as well. So it's probably being passed around. If for, let's say, 3 weeks, a month goes along, you haven't heard from that agent, then yeah, go down to the next person on your list. And you can even say in the query letter, you know, I've first reached out to so-and-so who's within your company as well. I haven't heard from them, but I also am very interested in you representing me as well. You know, you can, don't be afraid to be honest that you reached out to one of their colleagues. Great. And I saw your chat, Angie. Yes, this is kind of week 3 and week 4. So that's why I had the sample letter up again, because last week we were supposed to revise our query letters. So I want to bring to the group, does anyone want to read their query letter? We spend some time workshopping that.
Yeah, I can share mine. And I think I also, because I'm using that, I forget which program said, the query tracker, the ones that use like the forms.
Yeah.
They ask for a pitch and a synopsis.
Mm-hmm.
And so can we talk a little bit about like the difference between like the pitch and the synopsis? It feels like I just keep repeating myself.
Yeah. So
in like different lengths.
Oh, okay, yeah, for sure. So the synopsis is really going to focus more on your story. So you're explaining what it is about, but you know, in a very concise manner. You know, talk about the protagonist. What is the protagonist conflict? What are they after? What are their goals? And some sub characters in that as well. As far as the pitch, that's where you're really coming across. We're saying, this is why I believe you should represent me. So you're trying to, it's more like think of it as a business pitch where you're trying to sell them on the idea of why they should pick you to be their client. Do you have a query letter or a little bit of the maybe that you want to share?
Yeah, is it okay if I share my screen?
Absolutely, please.
Sure. All right. You see that?
Yes, yeah.
So I'm querying a specific, this is for a specific agent at the NJ Brown agency. Do I read it? Do we read it silently?
Yeah, please feel free. If
Okay.
It's completely up to you. I don't want to take it feel pressure.
Okay, I'll read it. I'll read it and see what's up. Okay, dear Jennifer, according to your agency's website, you're actively seeking middle grade stories. I'm a huge fan of your client Meg Medina and her books, and think my stories fall in a similar vein. My novel, Valentina Unafraid, which centers on a 13-year-old undocumented queer protagonist, is approximately 62,000 words and is an own voices story. Comp titles include Ernesto Cisneros' Ethan Divided and Meg Medina's Mercesaurus Can Dance. Valentina Suarez's secret blooming feelings for the new girl, Zenaida, get her all sorts of distracted from her new role as 8th grade class president. On top of everything going on at school, Valentina has a feeling her parents are keeping something from her. In fact, all of the adults are acting weird and whispering about secure communities. Valentina sets out to figure out exactly what's happening while also trying to play it cool for the new girl. When Valentina finds out she's undocumented, she has no one to turn to. She's been lying to her bestest friends about Zenaida. She's been lying to Zenaida about what's been going on at home. As Valentina's life unravels, she will need to decide which secrets are worth keeping and which demand to step out of the shadows. I'm an immigrant from Juarez, Mexico, and was raised in Cicero, Illinois. I took from my own experiences of growing up undocumented to write Valentina and her family's story. I attended the YA fiction workshop at Tin House in November 2019, where I worked with author Morgan Parker. In July 2020, I attended Bona and worked with YA author Daniel Jose Older. I published some short fiction, prose, poetry, and personal essays, which you can find listed on my website. I have a PhD in English and an academic research focused on Latinx children's and young adult literature. Thank you for your time. Sonia Alejandra Rodriguez, and that's my info. And the synopsis is just here because I was working on it, but that's not part of my work.
This is phenomenal, Sonia. I love it.
Yeah. No problem.
Do you mind if we keep it up real quick?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No worries. Yes, this is excellent. I love how you first start with, you know, you're a fan of Jennifer's client, Meg. I think that's excellent to point that it shows that you're doing your research. Which one? The third line, my novel, Valentina Unafraid, which centers a 13-year-old undocumented queer protagonist, period. It seems like that could, like it cuts off too soon. Like maybe you could extend a little more on that.
To tell a little bit more about the story, just like
Yeah,
a little bit. Okay.
it just seems like it ends too abruptly. Like you're trying to explain something, but then you cut it off.
Yeah.
And then let's see. And then yes, the second paragraph, the synopsis is phenomenal. I don't know how much space you have left in the one page, but maybe if you want to also just sell on why you think Valentina's story would really resonate with undocumented 13-year-olds from the Latinx community as well. Excellent. And then the third paragraph, I have no notes on that. That was phenomenal. I love how you're talking about your skills. You talked about the things you've been apart. You talked about your your academia status. That was all great. Well
Is it weird? I thought it was weird to tell them to go look at my website. Because I didn't want to list all this.
I would actually even hyperlink your website there.
Right there.
So
Okay.
they can click on it and learn more about your work.
Thank you.
Well, this is an excellent start. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
I have a question. It relates to Sonia's query letter, but in general about like having established social media or anything really that pertains to you as a writer. Do you recommend that before we send out query letters? Like, of course, having Twitter, but like having a website or anything like that, especially if we're just starting out?
It's always helpful, but I don't want you to feel pressure that it's required. I would recommend in today's age, if writers are expected to at least have some sort of social media account, because from a publishing house perspective, they want to know that the writer's fans are going to be able to, interact with them beyond just their purchasing their book. So I would highly recommend if you don't have a website, then you get a Twitter or you get an Instagram or a Facebook or something like that, just to put yourself out in the world and allow your fans to find you and talk to you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, Sonia, I don't have much to offer because this is my first time writing a query letter, but I really liked how personal you made yours and how relatable. So.
Thank you. And I just used WordPress to make like a little website, and I try to keep it updated, but it's not super fancy, but it has helped to just be like, hey, here's more from me.
Yeah, and I believe Squarespace also offers free accounts as well. Anything that you can have stuff where your work can live and the agents can go just to get a little more about you, I can never hurt you.
I know in Sonia's query letter, I think you mentioned this before, but I don't remember what you said about comp titles. Can you expand on what that is?
Yeah, so comps is something that you will compare your work to. Okay, so you'll compare your work to something that's already been published or out in the world right now. I actually have an example. What I wanted to first check in with you first, Amanda, if you had anything that you wanted to workshop right now. Otherwise, I have a sample one that can answer your question for you.
I'm still working on it. I'm a little nervous about it. And also with, I know that we're all doing different genres, but since it's a kid's book, I'm struggling with having a synopsis and like giving the whole thing away. So I'm back and forth on it. I would share, but I'm not ready yet.
Totally understand. That's totally fine. So yeah, I'll just share my screen real quick and then we can go over. So this is a sample query letter from an agent named Marissa Higgins. She's no longer an agent right now, but I really like how this is her sample that she shares amongst the agents community. But this will be, let me zoom in on this a little bit. So I'll just read it aloud too. It says, "Hi, agent's name. I hope you and yours are holding up well, all things considered. I'm writing to see if you have potential interest in my original unpublished novel, The Wives. The book is adult literary fiction and comes in at around 70,000 words. Possible comps include Garth Greenwell's Cleanness, Kristen Arnett's Mostly Dead Things, and Raven Lalani's Lusters. I'm reaching out to submit my material after you've liked my pitch during DV Pit. In The Wives, Helen, a jittery copyright attorney and foot fetishist, courts a lesbian couple to date as her parents serve out plea deals after committing a rare and disturbing family crime. Helen compartmentalizes her life, the live streams of her feed, the calls from her parents at their separate facilities, her dates, with hard boundaries. The winter she meets Catherine, a literature professor, and her wife Katrina, a retired ballerina turned shoe seller. Helen quickly falls for the couple's curious intensity. Her life implodes, however, when one half of the couple secretly follows Helen on an afternoon she visits her parents' victim. In trying to better understand her parents' crime, Helen ultimately faces the truth about a childhood tragedy she repressed. The one person who can answer Helen's questions is the person she wants to see least. When she finally confronts him face to face, she realizes she's been asking the wrong questions all along. I'm a journalist from a progressive news site, a 2020 DC Arts and Humanities Grant recipient, a recent Tin House Workshop scholar, and a former Provincetown Fine Arts Works Center Summer Fellow in memoir. My nonfiction has appeared in Best American Food Writing 2018, Guernica, Salon, Catapult, The Rumpus, Glamour, and others. I have pasted the first 3 chapters below. Either way, thank you for taking the time to sit with my work. All the best, Marissa. So these will be the comps that that she listed that would align with what she's writing or how she's trying to portray that these works have sold so well, and I believe my work will sell equally as well as these books. And you see how she must have put her blurb of this during the DV Pit that I mentioned above, that's on Twitter, and the agent must have liked it, and then she reached out with this query letter. So that's also important to note that if you do go to these Twitter events or any in-person events and someone is interested, you want to put in your query letter like, hey, we met at this event, or hey, you liked my pitch during DV Pit, within your query letter so they know who you are. Does anyone have any questions or comments or things that they liked or didn't like about this?
For comp titles, should it all be from people that the agent has specifically worked with, or it can be across the genre?
Across genre, anything that's just out in the world.
I have a question about just like the format. Like, should our titles be capitalized? I see that the protagonist names or like characters' names are capitalized in all caps.
This is really a preference. You can go either way, but she does do that, I guess, to point out to the agent that these are the different characters. You see that she doesn't do it though with the main character, which is interesting. But yeah, it's just really a preference. If you want to really get the attention, it does not hurt to put this in all caps. But if you do it all caps, you only do it the first time the character appears.
Okay.
But definitely you want to put the title of your book in all caps. Always do that.
Okay. I think that what I'm struggling with most on the query letter is that intro paragraph of because I'm not necessarily introducing myself to the agent, but I'm trying to let the agent know I know who you are without sounding creepy and trying to come up as like amicable. And so then that first line in my query letter, I just took from that sample PowerPoint that you shared with us last week. So given that like we're in very like tumultuous time, is that something that like should we start that way? I like this first sentence. I hope you and yours are well, all things considered.
Yeah.
But then I'm concerned that it's like unoriginal and it might sound fake.
I think every agent is going to be different, but I think if you really get that sense of humanity across, because yes, these last 18 months has been hell from everybody. And it is nice to, from my own personal perspective, like it is nice to say that people, before they dive into trying to sell me this thing, that they're taking the time to consider, I hope everything's going on, like everything's going okay in your life, and then moving into the pitch.
Okay.
And then also to note with I have pasted the first 3 chapters below. So I imagine that the agent said in their requirements, I would like you to submit the first 3 chapters. So if you do find that in the guidelines, be sure to note that so they know that you are paying attention and that you know how to follow directions so let's say that the agent was like, please submit the full manuscript, then you would switch this up and said, I have attached or I have pasted the full manuscript. Whatever is in the guidelines, you should note that you are doing that. You're following these directions in the query letter as well.
I have a question that's basically everything outside of adult fiction and nonfiction. Is it your responsibility when you're pitching to give an age group, like if it's YA or children's books, or do they discern that once they read what you've given them?
You should state what genre it is and the demographic, definitely. But if you say like if it's fiction or nonfiction, like your standard, you don't need to say, this is for 25 to 6-year-olds. If you're just saying fiction or nonfiction, then it's going to be by default that it's for adults. But if for whatever reason, like for your example, you would mention this is a children's book, ages from this age to this age bracket.
Thank you.
Of course. I'm going to stop sharing this. All right, does anyone have any other questions or?
I have a question that's like kind of related, kind of unrelated to the query letter.
Yeah, of course, please.
When an editor at a publisher house, well, let me just talk about me. An editor at a publisher house approached me because we went to the same MFA program. And they want to work on a chapter series, but I don't have an agent. And so that it kind of worries me to try to like what that working relationship might look like if I don't have an agent yet. And so then when I'm querying, how do I let the agent know that, like, is that something that I should let them know that like I'm actively seeking because a publisher wants me to write something?
Yes, definitely. Well, does the editor know you don't have an agent?
Yes, I told them. Okay. And I've heard like mixed reviews about like go into that and that's okay, and then you can get an agent later, or get an agent first and then.
I would always recommend getting an agent first, unless you're well versed in a book contract. Then yeah, I would definitely. But to answer your question, yes, this will be a good opportunity for you to say, I've been approached by this person at this publishing house. I am seeking you to help me represent it for this chapter book, which is enticing for an agent. That's half the work that they don't even need to do. That you already have an editor. So be sure to put that in the first paragraph where it stands out immediately.
Even if it's not the project that I'm not querying, like it's because how do I explain this? So that chapter book series that is like a potential with this publisher, like I haven't, like they want me to write it, but I haven't written it.
Yeah.
And so then my middle grade novel is what is complete and is what I want an agent for.
Right.
So is that confusing?
So I think if it's really a preference on you, do you want to first focus on the chapter book, or do you want to first focus on the middle grade book? So if you want to first, my follow-up question would be, if you want to, for whatever reason, if you want to take up this opportunity and do the chapter book, then what you can say is, I'm seeking you. This person has reached out to me at this publishing house to do this chapter book. I am also working on a middle grade book. But you'd say that later on. First, you would first focus on the chapter book. And then if they express interest, then you said, I'm also working on a middle grade novel. Would you also be interested in representing me for this as well? Or do you simply want to represent me for the chapter book? But this would all be after you send the query letter.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Congratulations on that, by the way. That's exciting.
Yeah, thank you. And I think my first was like instinct was just dread because I don't have an agent and I don't know what it means.
Yeah.
But I think I want an agent for this middle grade, and then the chapter series works out, then that'd be great. But yeah, I'm not versed in contracts. I'm not versed in it, and I just don't want to get duped in any way.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak ill of your friend's character, but yeah, publishing houses could be easily shady, especially towards debut novel writers. If there is not a time period from the editor, like seeking your chapter book, then I say keep going out after the middle grade book, and then tell the editor, I would prefer to focus on this. If they're, unless they really want you to pump this out quickly. But that's something that, don't be afraid to ask them, like, what is the deadline on this? Are you seeking this right away, or can I first focus on my middle grade novel first?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, that helps me feel better. So I was like, oh, I don't want to jump. It's because, and I think most of it is because I just didn't want to pass on the opportunity, but I also don't want to like jump on it just because like I'm thirsty for publication, right? So I was like, okay, let me slow down.
Yeah, I definitely say get the agent first. Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Excellent. I'm gonna, well, if there's no other questions, so this next week will be more one-on-one sessions. So like Sonia, you and I we can, after you edit it, we will do a one-on-one session. Amanda, if you feel comfortable, it doesn't have to be the full manuscript. If you want to just workshop, a certain, like the intro or the synopsis or the closing, we could do whatever you want. But it'll be this day, next Saturday. Feel free to just shoot me your times via email, and we'll schedule a time. We'll hop on another Zoom call, and we'll spend 15 minutes workshopping it together where you feel comfortable enough to begin sending it out to the agents you desire.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. And Amanda, if you need help coming up with comp titles, I read a lot of like picture books, middle grade, and so I'm happy to try to help you come up with some.
Thank you, Sonia. I appreciate it.
Such great community in this workshop. I love it. Well, excellent. Angie, do you have any questions or final things?
I do not, but once you're done, could we have a chat afterwards? I want to ask you something.
Yeah, of course. I'll stay on the call.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
I'll send the slides once I'm done with Angie.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Have a good Saturday.
Thanks, you too. I'll see y'all next week.
Bye. Hey, Elle, how you doing?
I'm hanging in there.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm hanging in. Yeah. And then I move into a new apartment tomorrow. So it's just this last week, and then leading up to this week is just.
In the city?
Yeah, Brooklyn.
Okay. And where you currently live now?
Well, I've been in Long Island for the last few months.
Girl, Long Island.
Yeah, I've been at my sister's, and actually she was the one who had the shit went down yesterday or last week. So I'm very excited to leave Long Island.
Oh my God, Long Island sounds like states away.
It's like I haven't been in the suburbs since high school, and it was nice at first to get away and isolate, but it's too quiet up here. I gotta go. I'm going a little crazy.
My brothers both live in the suburbs, and every time I visit, I'm like, I don't know how you do it. I can't. I'm like, I'm not at the age yet for me to seek such quietness.
Yeah,
I live in Washington Heights, so I always hear the motorcycles and the loud music and the people playing dominoes outside. I'm used to
sirens.
Fireworks.
I didn't realize how much I missed that and how much that was music to my ears.
When I go out there, I'm like, yeah, I'm only here for 4 days. That's all I can handle.
I've been here for 3 months. I'm ready to go.
Oh, girl. Oh my God. That's a lot. But I wanted to stay on here because I wanted to talk to you. I was like, oh, well, Elle might be the person for me to ask. I'm interested in getting into publishing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just like trying to figure out the best way for me to get in there. I'm looking at these salaries, and I'm just like, I currently have a federal position. I'm a grants manager for a Veterans Affairs hospital. So I'm like pension, I have a very good salary. So, but my passion is in publishing. And I'm interested in making that switch, but currently I'm not seeing anything that's like, am I really going to change my quality of life for this passion?
Yeah, they're gonna, because what's the starting salary? Like 40K, right?
I haven't made 40K and
I mean, first of all, how can people live off 40K? But yeah,
that was my next comment, because after taxes, you're making like 35.
Right.
And I'm like, whoever's living in New York City, how are you paying rent? How are you sustaining yourself, even with a minimalist lifestyle? How are you doing that? I think that's just simply ridiculous.
I agree. I mean, I would ask you, I mean, you would probably, you're trying to be an editor, or you want to be an agent, right?
I'm considering both.
Consider both. Okay. Well, I guess it'll be a preference. If you do go the editor's route, like be in actual publishing houses, that yeah, they'll start you off on this ground floor. Maybe some crap houses probably maybe start you off as intern, depending on your experience. But if it's something that you think that you could do both of, I don't know what your work schedule is like. It's your federal job, and then as you build yourself up through the ranks, you'll eventually get up to that 60K and that 70K and the 80K. But that, I do want to be honest with you, like that does take years to get to that status. But because we're starting to really see this shift where the gates are beginning to open, it's not these white men anymore in that gatekeeping positions. So I think now is actually an excellent time to make that leap into the publishing world. If you feel if you really feel like you can, as well as say for the agenting perspective. But for that is, I mean, you won't get paid then unless you sell your writer's work. So that's something also to consider if you're making that leap as well too. So if you go the agency route, I definitely think you should keep your federal job. And then try to just juggle both. I mean, that was me. Like, I was working at bookshop and then doing agency. You have to kind of have two jobs for agents just starting out,
Can I ask you why you left?
Well, I really want to start.
Love for it?
I actually want to start focusing on my own writing. So it was really hard to leave. Like, I love actually Ladderbird. So like my boss was to be like a white woman. Like, she made me feel so seen. It was beautiful. But I really want to start focusing on my own writing. Screenwriting is actually my first passion, and I want to get back into filmmaking and movie making a little bit. So that is why. Like, I felt like I was, which as much as I loved my writers and my clients, I was putting so much to work at bookshop, working at Ladderbird. I had no energy and time to then work on my own writing. So I had to unfortunately make that sacrifice.
Well, I know I have a friend who works in California, and she works for an agency that represents screenwriters.
Oh, really?
Like big time ones.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So whenever you want to talk to her,
I would love to take you up on that.
Let me know if you have questions. I could definitely connect you with her.
I would love that. Yes, thank you. I'm working on I'm on the very infancy stages of writing a script right now. But once I get that done, I would love to hit you up and see what.
Okay, yeah, let me know and I'll connect you to her via email.
That sounds amazing. Thank you.
Okay. What was my next question? So under Dominican writers, we have an imprint. So we publish authors.
Oh, I never knew that. That's amazing. Yeah.
So
you have experience.
Right.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just like, wait a minute, we already have our small press. We've published like maybe 10 authors. So that's another thing. It's not like I'm starting from zero where I've never done this before, where I've never edited, where,
Right.
So, and then I'm also thinking, should I just create my own space and, and build?
I was just going to say, shit, Angie, why don't you just, build that into a powerhouse?
like, how do I just make myself a literary agent for certain stories? Like, how does that work? Is there like a certificate? Is there like...
There's no certificate. There's no required degree. There's no school. Like, you don't need to do all of that. Like, you seem to have the bare bones, the foundation. Like, I'd say build that out. Build more Dominican writers. Make this into a more powerhouse publishing house. And then you're at the top right there. And then as you build that out, if you do want to eventually, make the switch to another agent or another housing or another agency, then they could see, wow, look what AG has done. Yes, we definitely need her on our team.
Right. I mean, we're currently mentoring about 40 writers.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And though they might be emerging writers, a lot of them have potential to be published. And I also do consultations, and we have so many writers that come back to us who just feel so disappointed with the publishing industry because they get these responses from literary agents like, we don't have the bandwidth, or when you were talking about the social media, there's a lot of literary agents who put a lot of emphasis on whether or not you have a strong following.
It's disgusting. I hate
and I know there was one writer who that was the response, and I said to her, you know what, just tell them that you have our 20,000 followers on Instagram if they want to harbor on a following and social media presence, because a lot of these writers are concentrating on their work and they're not necessarily putting all that energy on social media, which takes energy and time.
Yes. It's actually, like, I can talk for days. Like, I think it's really a step back to see like how publishing is really going this influencer route. Like, where, yes, you have to have a substantial following to sell a book. That's such a downgrade to why I feel like to push the culture forward. It's sad.
A lot of the marketing and promotion is being left up to the author.
Yes, that is
well. They're not doing as much to market and promote these books. At least I'm seeing it for authors of color.
Mm-hmm.
Because white people, they get the hell out of promotion of their books. But when it comes to our Latinx stories and when our writers of color are publishing, a lot of them are just left to do the work. We had a writer who was she? I think she was published by Harper. I'm not sure. And we did a live conversation on our platform on Instagram, and I asked her how it was going, and she was like, oh, well, it's a lot of work. This is so much energy. I had to set up my own virtual book tour because my publisher told me I only needed 2 events.
That's ridiculous.
That I should stick to 2 events. But this girl, she really dedicated her time to doing her virtual book tour, and she connected to like 15 people and platforms to help her promote her book. She did an excellent job, but I could only imagine how exhausting that was for her. Right. So she says, I was very disappointed that this is what came out of my contract. Right. And she says, I would sign again, but I wish I would have known this.
Mm-hmm. I do think this conversation definitely needs to be had
and
more.
For people who don't have any marketing and promotional experience, what does that mean to that author? Because they're accepting your book deal because you come with all this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is it that you don't know how to promote this book? Right? Because at that point, I should be asking the author, who are your community partners?
Exactly.
Right? Who should we be reaching out to?
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people it's not that difficult. So just ask or do a Google search. This was one of my issues with In the Heights, by the way. Because I was like, I live in Washington Heights and I could name every nonprofit up here and every community partner up here because I've worked with most of them. Mm-hmm. And I also sit on an advisory board of Dominican actors.
Oh my God.
Mostly
Drop the ball. Drop the ball.
They're mostly theater actors. Okay. And a lot of them also sing. So, to me, it's just like, you weren't going around asking.
They didn't care. But then, did you see the interview, the root interview though?
Lin-Manuel's family is friends with the founder of Word Up Bookstore, and the founder of Word Up Bookstore is my mentor. She's on my board.
Wow.
So had he asked her, do you know anyone Dominican? She would have reached out to me and connected us for whatever it was that he was looking for.
It was
Right?
late.
So to me, it's just like, you're not doing your due diligence. You don't give a fuck.
They don't give a fuck. It was lazy, it's inconsiderate, and then gonna sit up there and lie in that the root interview, and like it's just like, and the lack of accountability too. It's
Right.
oh my god. But
he has refused to talk about any of that.
Mhm.
But he refused that interview because he knew.
He knew. He definitely knew. And Lin-Manuel knew too.
And I tell people, I was like, guys, Lin-Manuel is not walking around Washington Heights. Please, he's not. He lives off Broadway on Castle Bridge with the millionaires.
Okay.
Okay. He is not walking into these bodegas and into our local barber shop. The only time Lin-Manuel walks into Washington Heights is when he got to take the A train on 191st Street. That's it. That's the only time. I'm like, I've lived in Washington Heights all my life. I grew up here. This man is not like,
He's not community.
Like you bump into him at your local spot. It doesn't happen.
Community, like no. He's a poser.
But yeah, like those are my issues with publishing when it comes to our authors of color, the lack of marketing, the lack of promotion. You know how many authors just reach out to me to help them promote their book because we have set up that mechanism already on our end. And I'm like, I'm only one person with a small board. How is it that you who have this huge corporation
right
and do the same? You know, and it's not fair. A lot of our authors of colors are left alone to do the bulk of that job. You see the publisher, they're like, oh, here, we published your book. And now we're going to take most of the money.
That's what I was just going to say, but still expected to then give that money back to the publishers when they did all the work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I will probably consider your advice of just making Dominican writers a bigger entity and continue doing that work, because I also don't see myself, how do I say this? I know publishing is slow to change, right? And I haven't seen people that are open to ideas and changing how things are getting done.
I don't see it either. Yeah,
and I'm more grassroots, right? I'm like, let's connect to this person, let's do this, and let's do that. And that's not how they work.
No. They're very complacent in how it's been for the last 100 years. And yeah, I think.
Oh my God, Elle, I'm gonna have to edit this video because I was still recording.